What's up, everyone? Before we dive in, let me introduce myself properly. My name is Ion. I'm 32 years old. 9 years ago, my entire family of doctors looked me in the eye and told me I was no longer their son. They erased me. They acted like I never existed. And then, after almost a decade of silence, I walked into my sister's wedding, and my mother said something that stopped the entire room cold. If you're new here, do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell. Stories like this hit harder when we experience them together. Drop a comment and tell me where you're watching from. Alright, let's begin. I was born into a house that smelled like antiseptic and ambition. My father was a senior cardiologist. My mother was a gynecologist who still got called into the hospital at 2 a.m. My older brother was already in medical school by the time I was 15. My younger sister was being groomed to follow the same path. In our house, the dinner table conversations revolved around surgeries, case studies, and which medical college had the best residency programs. Failure was not a word that existed. Becoming anything other than a doctor was treated like a personal betrayal. From the time I could talk, the script was already written for me. Ion will be a surgeon. Ion has steady hands. Ion is the quiet one, perfect for the operating theater. I played along for years. I scored well. I took the entrance exams. I even got accepted into a good medical college. Everyone was proud. Relatives sent sweets. My father called his colleagues to brag. My mother posted a long message on the family WhatsApp group about how the next generation of doctors was ready. But inside, I was dying. I didn't hate medicine, I just didn't love it. What I loved was design spaces, structures, the way light falls inside a room, the feeling of creating something that people live inside. Architecture. That was the only thing that made my chest feel light. I used to sketch buildings in the margins of my biology notes. I used to stay up late watching documentaries about Frank Lloyd Wright and Zaha Hadid while my family thought I was revising anatomy. The day I finally told them, I chose a Sunday afternoon. Everyone was home. My father was reading a medical journal. My mother was making tea. My brother was on a call with a senior resident. My sister was studying for her entrance exams. I stood in the middle of the living room and said the words that destroyed everything. I'm not joining medical college. I've decided to study architecture. Silence. My father slowly closed the journal. My mother stopped pouring tea. My brother ended his call. My sister looked up from her books with wide eyes. My father was the first to speak. His voice was calm, which somehow made it worse. Say that again? I repeated it. I tried to explain. I talked about passion, about mental health, about how forcing myself into a career I hated would destroy me. I told them I had already applied to architecture schools and received acceptance letters. My mother put the teapot down so hard that tea spilled across the table. You are throwing away your future, she said. Do you understand what this family has sacrificed? Your father worked 16-hour shifts so you could have the best education. I missed your childhood for night duties, and this is how you repay us. My brother stood up. You're embarrassing us. What will people say? The son of 2 doctors who couldn't even become one? I tried to stay calm. I'm not rejecting you. I'm just choosing a different path. My father looked at me like I was a stranger. In this house, there is only one path. If you walk away from it, you walk away from us. I thought he was bluffing. I thought it was anger that would cool down after a few days. I was wrong. That night, my mother packed a suitcase with my clothes. My father handed me an envelope with some cash and my educational documents. He told me I had until morning to leave. My sister cried and hugged me in the hallway, whispering that she was sorry. My brother refused to look at me. At 6 a.m., I stood outside the gate with a suitcase and nowhere to go. My mother watched from the window. She didn't wave. She just closed the curtain. I was 23 years old and completely alone. The first year was the hardest. I slept on friends' couches. I worked part-time jobs, coffee shops, delivery, night shifts at a printing press while attending architecture classes during the day. There were nights I went to bed hungry. There were mornings I almost called home. Pride and pain kept me from doing it. I cut off all contact. No calls, no messages, no social media stalking. I deleted every number. I told myself that if they could erase me so easily, I could erase them too. Slowly, things started to improve. I graduated. I got an internship at a mid-sized firm, then a junior position, then a real salary. I moved into a small one-bedroom apartment. I made friends who didn't care about my last name or my family's profession. I dated. I failed. I got back up. I designed my first independent project, a small community library, and when it was completed, I stood outside it at night and cried because no one from my bloodline was there to see it. Years passed. I turned 25, 27, 30. The pain softened into a dull ache that lived in the background. I stopped expecting them to reach out. I stopped checking if they had tried. Life became mine. Then, 9 years after the day they threw me out, a message arrived. It came from an unknown number. Ion, it's me, your sister. Please don't ignore this. I'm getting married next month. I want you there, please. I stared at the screen for a long time. My hands were shaking. Part of me wanted to delete it. Another part of me, the part that still remembered her crying in the hallway the night I left, couldn't. I replied with one word. Okay. She sent the details. Venue, date, time. She told me our parents didn't know she had invited me. She said she would handle it. She said she just needed her brother there. I almost didn't go. The night before the wedding, I sat on the edge of my bed and argued with myself for hours. What if they humiliated me in public? What if my father ordered security to remove me? What if my mother looked at me like I was still the disappointment who had walked out of their house? But something stronger pulled me. Closure, or maybe just the need to see my sister happy, or maybe the quiet, stubborn hope that 9 years had changed something. I wore a simple black sherwani, nothing flashy. I arrived late on purpose, after most guests had already taken their seats. The wedding hall was decorated in soft gold and ivory. Fairy lights hung from the ceiling. The air smelled of roses and perfume. I stood at the entrance for a full minute, heart hammering, before I stepped inside. And that was when I saw them. My father, standing near the stage in a cream-colored suit, talking to relatives. My brother beside him, taller, broader, wearing the same serious expression he always had. And my mother seated in the front row, wearing a deep maroon sari, her hair pinned up the way she used to for special occasions. She looked older. There were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 9 years ago. But she still carried herself with the same quiet authority. I kept my head down and found a seat near the back. I told myself I would stay only for the ceremony. I would see my sister walk down the aisle, give her a quiet hug later, and leave before anyone noticed me. The music started. Guests stood. My sister appeared at the entrance in a red bridal lehenga, looking more beautiful than I had ever seen her. She was smiling, but her eyes were searching the crowd. When they landed on me, her smile widened and her eyes filled with tears. She gave me the smallest nod. I nodded back. The ceremony began. Vows were exchanged. Rituals were performed. I watched everything from a distance, feeling like a ghost who had somehow been allowed to witness a life that no longer included him. And then it happened. During a short break between rituals, my mother stood up and turned around, scanning the hall. Her eyes passed over the crowd and stopped on me. For a second, the entire world froze. Her face went pale. Her lips parted. She took one step forward, then another. People around her noticed the change in her expression and followed her gaze. One by one, heads turned. Whispers started. My father noticed the disturbance and looked in the same direction. When he saw me, his jaw tightened. My brother's eyes widened in disbelief. My father, standing near the stage in a cream-colored suit, talking to relatives. My brother beside him, taller, broader, wearing the same serious expression he always had. And my mother seated in the front row, wearing a deep maroon sari, her hair pinned up the way she used to for special occasions. She looked older. There were lines around her eyes that hadn't been there 9 years ago, but she still carried herself with the same quiet authority. I kept my head down and found a seat near the back. I told myself I would stay only for the ceremony. I would see my sister walk down the aisle, give her a quiet hug later, and leave before anyone noticed me. The music started. Guests stood. My sister appeared at the entrance in a red bridal lehenga, looking more beautiful than I had ever seen her. She was smiling, but her eyes were searching the crowd. When they landed on me, her smile widened and her eyes filled with tears. She gave me the smallest nod. I nodded back. The ceremony began. Vows were exchanged. Rituals were performed. I watched everything from a distance, feeling like a ghost who had somehow been allowed to witness a life that no longer included him. And then it happened. During a short break between rituals, my mother stood up and turned around, scanning the hall. Her eyes passed over the crowd and stopped on me. For a second, the entire world froze. Her face went pale. Her lips parted. She took one step forward, then another. People around her noticed the change in her expression and followed her gaze. One by one, heads turned. Whispers started. My father noticed the disturbance and looked in the same direction. When he saw me, his jaw tightened. My brother's eyes widened in disbelief. My mother kept walking toward me. The hall grew quieter. Conversations died. Even the musicians paused. She stopped 3 feet away from where I was sitting. Up close, I could see the years on her face more clearly. There was something in her eyes I had never seen before, not anger, not disappointment, something heavier. She opened her mouth, and the words that came out of her were not the ones I had prepared myself for. They were the words that would change everything. My mother stood in front of me in that crowded wedding hall. The music had stopped. Hundreds of eyes were on us. My father and brother were walking toward us now, faces tight with a mixture of anger and shock. I stayed seated. I didn't stand. I didn't speak. I just looked at her. She took a shaky breath. Her voice, when it finally came, was quieter than I expected, but every word carried across the silent hall. I was wrong. 3 words. That was all she said at first. Then she continued, her voice breaking. I was wrong about you. I was wrong about everything. For 9 years I told myself you had failed us, but the truth is, we failed you. A soft gasp moved through the guests. My father's step slowed. My brother's mouth opened, but no sound came out. My mother kept going. Tears were already sliding down her face, carefully controlled, the way a doctor's tears always are present, but disciplined. I spent every night of those 9 years wondering if you were alive, if you had eaten, if you hated us. I checked every architecture award list online, hoping to see your name. When I finally found one of your projects last year, I sat on the bathroom floor and cried for an hour. Your father knows. He found me there. She glanced back at my father for a second, then returned her eyes to me. We told ourselves we were protecting the family's name. We told ourselves discipline was love. But all we did was break our own child, and then pretend the pieces didn't matter. My sister had left the stage. She was standing a few feet away now, crying openly, holding the edge of her lehenga. My mother took one more step closer. I don't expect forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I needed you to hear this from my mouth, in front of everyone who watched us throw you away. I am sorry, Ayan. I am so sorry. The hall was completely silent. I stood up slowly. For 9 years I had imagined this moment in 100 different ways. In some versions I screamed. In others I turned and walked away. In the darkest ones, I told her it was too late. But standing there, looking at the woman who had once packed my suitcase and closed the curtain on me, I felt something I hadn't expected. Not triumph. Not revenge. Just a deep, exhausted grief for all the years we had lost. I didn't hug her. Not yet. I wasn't ready. Instead, I looked at my father. His eyes were red. He opened his mouth, closed it, then finally spoke in a voice I barely recognized. I was the one who told you to leave, he said. I carried that decision every single day. There is no excuse, there is only regret. My brother stepped forward next. His voice was thick. I was cruel to you that night. I've hated myself for it longer than I can admit. I'm sorry, bye. The word bye hit me harder than I expected. My sister finally reached us. She grabbed my hand and squeezed it so tightly it hurt. "I never stopped being your sister," she whispered. "Not for one day." Around us, relatives and guests were wiping their eyes. Some looked ashamed, others looked moved. A few older uncles who had once nodded in agreement when my father disowned me now stared at the floor. I still hadn't spoken. My mother waited. Everyone waited. Finally, I found my voice. "I built a life without you," I said quietly. "I learned how to stand without any of you holding me up. I don't need you the way I once did." Pain flashed across my mother's face, but she nodded, accepting it. "But," I continued, "I never stopped being your son, even when I tried to. Even when I told myself I had erased you the same way you erased me, I never could." A soft sob escaped my mother. She pressed a hand to her mouth. I looked at each of them in turn: father, mother, brother, sister. "I'm not coming back as the boy you threw out. That boy is gone. But if you want to know the man I became, I'm willing to let you try." My mother stepped forward, and for the first time in 9 years, wrapped her arms around me. She was shaking. I felt her tears against my neck. After a long moment, I raised my arms and held her back. My father placed a hand on my shoulder. My brother stood close, eyes wet. My sister clung to my other side. We stayed like that while the wedding hall watched a family that had been broken for nearly a decade begin, slowly and imperfectly, to put itself back together. The rest of the evening passed in a blur. Relatives approached carefully. Some apologized. Some simply squeezed my hand without words. My sister's new husband, a kind-eyed man who had clearly been told the whole story, shook my hand firmly and said, "I'm glad you came, Jiju." Later that night, after the rituals were over and most guests had left, the 5 of us sat in a quiet corner of the venue. No grand speeches, no sudden perfect healing, just conversations that were awkward and necessary. My father asked about my work. I told him about the library, about the residential projects, about the nights I still stayed up sketching. He listened without interrupting. My mother asked if I had eaten properly all these years. The question was so ordinary, so motherly, that it almost undid me. My brother admitted he had followed my career from a distance and had been proud in secret. My sister just kept holding my hand as if she was afraid I would disappear again. Before I left that night, my mother walked me to my car. The parking lot was quiet. The fairy lights from the venue glowed in the distance. She looked at me for a long time. "I know one apology doesn't fix 9 years," she said. "I know we have a long road, but if you're willing, I want to walk it." I nodded. "One step at a time." She smiled through her tears, the first real smile I had seen from her in a decade. "One step at a time," she agreed. I drove home that night with the windows down, the cool air on my face, and a strange new weight in my chest. Not the heavy weight of abandonment I had carried for years, but something lighter. Something that felt like the beginning of peace. Healing didn't happen overnight. There were still difficult conversations. There were still moments of old pain flaring up. Trust takes time to rebuild, and some scars never fully disappear. But the silence was finally broken. And for the first time in 9 years, I was no longer a stranger to my own family. If this story stayed with you, please hit the like button and subscribe. It genuinely helps more people find these stories. Turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next one. Tell me in the comments, do you think families can truly heal after years of rejection? Or are some wounds too deep? I'll be reading every comment. Thank you for listening to my story. This is Ion signing off.